Hi everyone, I'm Stan from Eagle Vision. I'm here with Mike Scott. Mike, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I wanted to have a chat with Mike around thought leadership. I met Mike probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and one thing that's been really interesting to me was how he comes across on the social media channels. But look, a little bit of background to Mike. He's scaled and built a number of businesses, and the last one was quite a significant one. And he's actually finally employed at the age of 40 now. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
So Mike, what is your take on publishing content? Why do you do it?
Yeah, so firstly, I think it's important to note that I hate social media, which is always a weird thing to start with.
Yep.
So I'm only on LinkedIn, and it's for a very specific reason. So that's a good starting point, right? I don't like social media. I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on Instagram, I'm not on anything else.
Yep.
The other part of this is that this will be an unpopular opinion, but I try not to scroll LinkedIn at all. So I try to have a one-directional relationship with LinkedIn, right? So I try to post and engage with people in my little world, but that's about it. I try very hard not to scroll. I don't have the app on my phone. I'm quite deliberate with it. Okay, so with that said, it starts with a strategy, right? It really does. So like if you're just posting on LinkedIn for the sake of posting on LinkedIn, don't do that. If you're a social media strategist or your marketing company is saying we've got to get one post a day or one post a week, bullshit. Complete and utter nonsense, right? You need to have a strategy. Why are we doing this? What does success look like? In our case, so my previous business, Nona, which was the most recent business that I had, we were acquired, so it no longer exists. It was a software development company with quite a specific niche focus, right? We had a very specific objective with LinkedIn, is raise our profile, become thought leaders. Why? Because we were being seen as vendors, and we wanted to shift the world, our target audience, to see us as experts.
Right.
What is the difference between those two things? A vendor negotiates on price. The end. It's procurement, right? There's no value conversation there. It's what is the price? Knock it down, okay? Or the terms.
Yeah.
An expert is different. An expert, a potential client comes to and says, help me and guide me through or over an obstacle.
Yeah.
It's a value conversation. You don't negotiate on price. You negotiate on outputs, value, etc. And that shift is massive if you're a services business, especially because you get out of this dollar by dollar by dollar by dollar conversation and you get into what's the picture that we can help take your business to. So we used LinkedIn as a vehicle to disseminate the content and thoughts and work that we had created to a specific audience in a specific way, and it was deeply powerful. So I'll stop there and
Sure, yeah,
any
that's cool.
questions.
So, look, I don't want to talk too much about LinkedIn in this episode, really. We just want to talk about strategy in this one.
Yeah.
So also, when you're posting and seeing that there's quite a lot of vulnerability and humility in those posts, whether they were then related back to the Nona corporate page, why did you decide to do it that way?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it took us a long time to get to that. So, as I mentioned, this particular business was a deeply technical business, right? We built software for blockchain and fintech scale-ups, okay? Deep engineering capability. I'm not an engineer. I didn't even understand half of the stuff that we did, right?
Sure.
I had exceptionally strong partners, but I'm the leader of this business that does this thing that I can't do.
Right.
So what value can I add on a social media channel, right? What we realized after a long time was there's an adage in sales, which is like you don't sell to businesses, you sell to people, right? So who are we selling to? Well, we're selling to generally decision makers of startups or scale-ups that have raised a lot of money, so usually north of $20 million US. And these are human beings that are in the trenches struggling with running, growing businesses and teams. So what we realized was what I can speak to as an individual is running a business, running a team, building a culture. The difficulties of having a family and running a business and building a culture. The difficulties of how do you multiply the efficacy of the people in your team. So I started doing an experiment and going, well, what if I just speak about, hey, as a founder to a founder, we can connect. And it had amazing impact.
Yeah, brilliant.
Something that I want to just put a point on this. I know you said you don't want to speak about LinkedIn, but I can't not speak about strategy and not speak about LinkedIn because that was a deep part of our strategy, right? I want to say something that is it was quite powerful for me to realize. There are a lot of vanity metrics in LinkedIn, the most common of which are likes and comments, okay? This is contrary to what most people are going to tell you. When I put out a post on LinkedIn, and I've slowed down a hell of a lot since we got acquired because the strategy is now doesn't exist really, right?
Sure.
So when you put out a post, this is what used to happen with me. We were trying to get to very difficult to get to people, usually very high profile people, raised a lot of money, therefore everybody wants them. These are not people that generally are easy to get to.
Yeah.
And I noticed something quite interesting is that I would put out a post and I'd get really excited because it would get 20,000, 30,000, 50,000 views. And I'd be like, amazing, I'm doing well.
Yeah.
But then I'd look at like who was actually interacting with it and who was liking it. And it was generally people that I knew or people that, just to be frank, I didn't care about in the context of business.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is silly.
Right.
But then something started happening. The people that I wanted it to reach, they wouldn't like it. I wouldn't know if they viewed it and they wouldn't comment on it. What they would do is direct message me.
Brilliant.
So it was quite interesting that the metric for us actually came into like, this post has been successful because a target person has interacted with me. So when you see these people on LinkedIn getting thousands of likes and thousands of this and thousands of comments, cool, maybe it's successful.
Sure.
But the real value is when the founder of a business that is directly your target audience DMs you and goes, shit, you are speaking to me, can we talk? I've had CEOs of banks reach out to me and go, Mike, your content, it's like you're in my brain, but they can't comment. They can't like, they can't publicly talk about it. I've got a direct line to the CEO of a bank. We speak about stuff all the time. He will never, ever comment, like, or show support on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
What am I saying here? Be careful of vanity metrics. It's not just about likes. It's not just about comments. That's great for reach, exposure, etc.
Yeah.
The real value is, am I getting engagement from the target that I'm going after?
Cool. So back to strategy. So you've picked two channels, one inbound, one outbound. You've built a podcast, moderately successful podcast. That's the title of it. And then the second one, you picked LinkedIn. Why did you choose those two channels?
Okay, so firstly, just in case the audience is going to search, my current podcast is called How to Be Moderately Successful. That's not what I'm talking about to you, okay?
Right.
So just don't get confused. So
okay.
Go ahead and check out the podcast, but that's not what we're talking about here. We picked LinkedIn because, kind of obvious, it's like that's where our audience would hang out, right? Why did we start a podcast in the business? Okay, so we started a podcast in the business. The podcast was called The FinTech Founder Journey. It no longer exists, which is a point in and of itself. It had a job to do. It did the job. When we sold the business, we closed the podcast, right? Yeah. It's a tool, and this is important to understand. A podcast is a tool. You're not going to be Joe Rogan. Don't try to be Joe Rogan. Right. It's a tool. Come back to what do you want that tool to do? So we had a great moment of insight, right? We, as I've said before, we spent a lot of time and effort figuring out who is our target client, what about them makes us want to work with them, and the much harder question to answer is, what about us is particularly relevant to them that will make them choose us over the other guys. Okay, that's the hard work. That's the really hard work. You're kind of wasting your time doing anything we're talking about today unless you've done the hard work, okay, which we call positioning, okay? Once we had our positioning done, it took us 2 years. We knew, I won't bore you with the details of why, that we were looking for fintech and blockchain scale-ups, right? What do we mean by scale-up? In our definition, they had raised north of about $20 million. It's just a lot of money. Why? Because their problem had shifted from something to something else. I won't bore you with the details. Okay, so we knew exactly who our target audience was. We also knew why we were particularly relevant to them. Okay. Once we had that, that's great. We thought we had solved the world's problems. Then we were like, awesome. So we got to get hold of decision makers, like founders, in $100 million plus valuation startups that have just raised a Series A of $50 million. Great. How the hell do we get hold of these people? They're some of the most difficult people on the planet to get hold of. You raise $50 million, everybody wants a piece of you, right? You send them a message saying, hey, can we do your software development on LinkedIn? You're dreaming. You're going to get nothing. So what did we do? We harnessed the human ego, right? People love to talk about themselves. I'm here with you because you said, Mike, come and talk about yourself. So I said, yes. Everyone's going to do that, right? It's a fundamental human thing.
Of course.
When you go to a party and you said, hey, that guy was really cool. If you look back, it's probably because that guy was asking you questions about yourself. Okay, so we said, how do we harness this? So I started an experiment and I said, hey, Mr. Founder, well done on your Series B of X million dollars. I love what you're doing with Y FinTech product. Not a word about our business, not a word about working with them. I'd love to interview you on the FinTech Founder Journey podcast to get your learnings and your experiences. Are you up for an interview? Stan, 9 out of 10 people said yes. I could not, on LinkedIn, a channel that's I was just like, holy shit, this is amazing.
Right.
Okay, so now we've got engagement, okay?
Yeah, cool.
Yes, sure, or tell me more, but we're in. Then what did we do? We scheduled half an hour just to go, hey, can we just half an hour to talk about like general outline?
Maybe hold on to all of that because we'll talk about it specifically in the podcast episode.
Cool.
But just wanted to sort of cover over the overall LinkedIn strategy and the podcast strategy. Look, we're going to get to a lot more detail in the further sessions. Thanks so much for watching. See you again.